Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for still having the patience in the late afternoon or the afternoon after having lunch to listen to a little bit about EUROMETAL. And thank you for the invitation to SteelOrbis. Istanbul is actually my second home over the past 20 years. I have been here very, very often. I've always enjoyed the city, and also this time it was more than a pleasure to come here, escaping actually from the still cold Germany. We still had actually last weekend minus temperatures to the spring of Istanbul. So what a nice day, and what some nice days. So today, as I was just introduced, I'm going to tell you a little bit about EUROMETAL, about the Federation, about European distribution, and perhaps another comment that when I was listening to the statements that were made earlier about Turkey, there are certainly similarities. I mean, the problems that you have, the same we have, or let's say similar problems we have, and one of the issues or one of the remarks made actually brought it up to the point that we are actually living today in a global village. That means everything which is affecting us by politics today is affecting all of us and will affect us. That's why it will be, and it is and will be extremely important that all of us working in the steel industry will be and will remain conscious about what's happening in the world, and are also actively participating in certain issues that perhaps steel traders, steel distributors, steel end users have not done in the past. That means also looking at the political environment and also participating or trying to influence political decisions. I know that for many people it is not on the agenda because they simply do not have the people to organize this, but it should be, because it is one of the surviving factors for the future. So about EUROMETAL. EUROMETAL, we are not a national, we are a European federation. That means we have, as you know, also in Europe, we have a lot of national federations. These national federations are federations for the participants, that means for the steel industries in the different countries in Europe. EUROMETAL is slightly different. It is also not young anymore. It was actually founded in 1950 and responsible, or let's say also defending and having the interest of the European distribution and steel service center industry. The structure is pretty lean. That means we have the General Assembly, we have the EUROMETAL presidency, where I'm a member of, and then we have the general management. That means the people who are daily taking care of everything, to putting together the statistics that we are accumulating, that we are collecting, and also taking care of the member matters. Certainly we have in Europe, perhaps, I think this is also one of the issues, that compliance is something which is not so on the agenda here right now, but compliance is a big issue. It has become a big issue in Europe in the past years. That means not only each company, but also each federation needs to have a compliance and auditing advisor who is then controlling the organization and controlling the general management and the presidency. So, again, a strong team, all of the people that work, yeah, now it works. All of the people who are in the presidency are coming from the steel business. That means they are actually either working for integrated steel mills, or they are working for steel service centers, distributors. That means the interest of everybody is represented in the organization. What is the strategic focus? And this has been questions a lot also by the national federations. What is the strategic focus of EUROMETAL? And it's my pleasure also of bringing over this message to you today, because the strategic focus of EUROMETAL is also representing the interest of not only European, but also perhaps Turkish end users and Turkish steel people. We are today working, and also the clientele, if you see the players in the European steel market, they used to source their steel internally. That means from the European community. That's basically was still 10 years ago. Almost, there was much more than 90% of material which was bought, which was sourced from Europe. And this has then dramatically changed, also certainly with the consolidation of the market. That means with the mergers and acquisitions in the European steel market, with an ArcelorMittal, with a Chorus, with the ThyssenKrupp and Hirsch issues. That means the developments that we have seen in the consolidation, which is continuing, as you can see in the current time. So steel sourcing not only from Europe, but also from abroad. That means outside of Europe. This is for many customers, particularly the ones with a higher purchase volume, a major issue. Then, of course, the new consumer trends. The consumers are very spoiled today. That means, particularly, of course, the automotive sector, but also other sectors, they are just waiting, or they are just demanding just-in-time deliveries. They are having actually new rules in terms of supplies and also in administration. So that means these new consumer trends, as we call them, have to be taken into consideration also in the future, because this is also a lot of bureaucracy that each and every player has to take into consideration. The consolidation I already mentioned. We have consolidation in all forms. We have the consolidation in terms of steel supplies. As you know, there is ArcelorMittal, or let's say the takeover of Ilva by ArcelorMittal in front of the door. We have actually even now the acquisitions in India. We have the merger between Tata and ThyssenKrupp, which is all going to happen this year. And that means also for the end users, for the steel users, of course, a dramatic impact, because if also for ISO certification reasons, if you want to have the security of supplies, and you were relying on 2-3 suppliers in the past, and all of a sudden it becomes 1 or 2, then you might have a problem. So this is something that you need to take into consideration. Another point that you are also aware of is what is always in the media. And to be quite frank, I had hard times to understand what Industry 4.0 actually means. Industry 4.0 is basically a general term and means a lot in terms of, for example, in Germany, we are completely underdeveloped in terms of internet speed. This is something where hopefully now our new government will take care of, that we have, let's say, higher internet speeds in also the rural regions. But it's only one start. The other thing is that, and it doesn't also necessarily mean web shopping or whatever, but it's just to optimize material flows. Optimize the connection between end users and suppliers. That means what needs to be done that the process of material availability, material supplies and administration becomes more lean. And of course, just in time. Then the shift in ecosystems is something that everybody was talking about. I think in every single conference is currently talking about the political climate. That means, what is the influence of the Section 232? What is the influence of potential safeguard measures that was announced? That means actually announced at the beginning of last week. that they are looking at that. The European Commission is looking on that also as a reaction of the 232. So what impact does this have also on the future supplies of the material availability to the different steel-using partners, steel-using parties in the market? That's what I said at the beginning. You have to deal with that. We all have to deal with that because it's affecting us. It's also threatening our existence. So this is something also we are having on the agenda for us as EUROMETAL to taking a closer look at. So besides that, actually what EUROMETAL is doing, I wanted to give you today some figures, some factors about how European steel distribution works today. So we have, if you look at that, we have actually 250 steel producing companies for long and flats. We have 5,000 distributors and service centers and about 1 million end users. That's basically the market, how it works. We have these, the 100,000 people who are working for the 5,000 enterprises, which is now about steel distribution, not steel making. Steel making, where the estimate is roughly, according to Eurofair figures, is about 300,000 people working in steel making. So we have the 100,000 people who are working in steel distribution and 80 million tons that are shipped, and about 1 million European steel end users who are being supplied with that. So in this distribution area, we have two sectors. One is the steel service centers, where I'm going to get into a little bit later, and the multi-product proximity steel stock holding and distribution facilities. These are, and you will also see it, this is also a little bit divided into product groups. So this chart is giving you actually a very good overview about what product groups are being handled by what distribution channels. If you see how much actually you see the multi-product proximity stock holding shares in long products, and you see actually how gradually, then coming to the flat rolled products, how gradually the share of the stock holding companies are decreasing more into the direction of SSCs, that means of steel service center activities, and of course of the influence of the steel mills directly. That means how much of products and what product groups the steel mills are directly supplying to the end users. Then you see actually then the supply chain in the SSC group. That means you see the EU mills and of course non-EU mills, that means the imported share, and you see that about 38% of this material is going into flat service centers. That means steel service centers who are ranging, actually these are integrated ones and these are independent ones, but ranging actually from a certain tonnage up to, I think the largest still today is Becker Stahl in Germany with 1.3 million tons of annual capacity. And then you have, of course, as I said, the direct deliveries, which is, of course, with an increasing share. That means the vertical integration of the EU steel mills, that they want to ship more products directly to the steel end user. That means also the intermediation by that means by the stockholders, distributors, and also by the SSC is continuously shifting, has been shifting, and that means also this is under consolidation. Well, the role, as I indicated already, basically it's the typical intermediation that you know, and of course we are talking about the challenges and the problems that each of us in this field of distribution and also steel service center is facing today. So that means if you supply if you have the 80 million tons to the end users, actually looking at the market channel, how this is being distributed, you see actually that in long products, the share in long products. That means what share the multi-proximity and stockholders and the mills directly have in these fields, and that means how minor the share in this respect is in the steel service center area. That's for the current consumption, particularly of long products. Strip products is different again, but long products, you see on the one chart that 82% of long products is basically handled through stockholding. You see then actually in the differentiation, you see also here a comparison between steel service center activities and the distribution channels. You see that the independent SSC, mill-tied SSC, and manufacturing combined, that means people who are not only slitting and cutting as the typical steel service centers are doing, but also blank producing or part producing for the automotive industry. These are mostly second, third tier suppliers who are then also have direct relationships with the OEMs or have their pooling agreements. And pooling means that they have contracts where they are getting a certain percentage or a certain fee for turning the strip into a final product. On the other hand, you see the multi-product and stockholding sector, which is from structure-wise completely different. Very in size, much smaller than the big steel service centers, or major ones, but predominantly these are smaller ones. But specialists who also have, in many cases, the advantage that they are logistically favorable. That means they are close by. And that's coming also to another point, which was also touched earlier, which is logistics. Logistics is getting more and more expensive. There was one remark earlier, also from the statistics, that the majority of steel products is being handled by rail and by barge. I can say yes, on the statistical page, this may be right, but it only exists because the mass tonnages you can move by barge. That means it makes sense for everything which is above 500 tons, you can move by barge. If by train, the same counts actually if you have an organized traffic for train transportation. Yes, it does work. If you have, like we do for example, that we have also consignment stocks and that we don't have actually, that we are organizing every week the transportation for next week's or the weeks after deliveries, you have no chance because these are truckloads. So that means effectively, physically, we see that trucks cannot be substituted by any other means of transportation. Truck is still the mode of transportation, and this is also another challenge that we are facing right now. And this was also one of the issues that on the exhibition in Stuttgart end of last year, that very many European end users and steel service centers increased their transportation budget by roughly between 8 and 11% in terms of cost, because there's a lack of availability of trucks, and they also saw that as a sustainable effect. That means increasing transportation costs, and of course a better organization of loads. So the value generation, and I've heard since I joined EUROMETAL many years ago, this pricing for value. I heard a lot of times, and I could, on basis of the price competition, I could never really see that. But of course, what comes in, and again, there was a point made before, what is really the USP of a sales party today to make a customer happy, and also to make a customer happy sustainable. And this is something which is rapidly developing at the moment in Europe. That means the bureaucratic demands, that means the link to the ERP systems of the supplier and of the end user. The link, that means making a link available from the customer side to the supplier side, so that they can look into your system and say, yes, you have this available, and this is under process, this and then. So that means also that planning can be done in an optimized way in the whole supply and value chain. And there are a lot of developments at the moment, also on the mill side, but it's also on the SSC and on the distribution side to make this work. I think a good example is at the moment also the tendency. ArcelorMittal was the first one to implement that you are putting in the product, defining the product that you want, putting into the system on the web, and under the bottom you're receiving the price and delivery time. No negotiation. Basically, you don't have an influence how this price was defined, you see it. That's it. So this is also one of the next steps in digitalization. So the bridge, as we know it, the bridge between steel making and steel using, and the different models in between, with the different points. I don't want to read now, you have it all in front of you. Actually, what is the producer's business and what is the end user's business, and what are the different functions in to cross this bridge. Who is crossing this bridge, and basically who stands on the one side, who is standing on the other side, fulfilling their obligations. So this is something that is also changing now significantly, and also in view of the ability of certain parties to optimize supplies. We have, of course, the value to both parties. We have the value that we have to consider to the mills, to the steel making side, and also to the end users. So what do we have in terms of steel distribution? We have the processing service, the product know-how, because mostly they are concentrating, they are focusing on certain products that they are supplying to their clientele. They have the local footprint, meaning they are nearby. They are reachable within a few hours. They have the delivery times, let's say reduced delivery times, because they, as a stockholder, you always have to keep a certain stock, which is also, by the way, optimized through the digitalization. That means, again, going back the chain and saying, give me your budget for this year, or give me your budget for the next half year, so that we can optimize the stocks that we are keeping. Also to reduce, again, overheads and costs. We have the one-stop shopping possibility for the client, that he can say, I want to have actually an S235JR in 3mm by 1250 by 6000, and I want at the same time to have a DX51D for certain accessory parts and whatever in Z140 and for these parts. So it's basically, it's still something that no mill can do. Multi-product offering, the product sourcing, that of course, as I said initially, that also the stockholders are looking at the moment, not only at the EU suppliers, but also outside. Where can I get what product at a reasonable price? And customers logistics, whereas the mills, that means the big mills, they are looking actually for bulk orders. They, of course, they have to run their campaigns. They cannot consider, oops, that was too quick. They cannot consider the short lead times that a stockholding company can do. So that means there is still the bridge, or let's say actually the duration of the bridge that can be taken by the parties and can be utilized by the parties in the steel business. So we have last year issued the first white paper, the EUROMETAL white paper, with focus on the future challenges of the industry. And this is also going rapidly, and I had a discussion on the weekend actually with a friend of mine, and she was saying, well, these automatic driving cars, no passenger, I mean no driver anymore. This is going to take a long time. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And the same counts for actually the different models like e-mobility and whatsoever. So what's happening in the automotive industry right now is that they are developing different models in terms of fuel. That means actually with what a car in the future is going to drive. And on this basis, of course, also with the materials. Because if you have only a battery, then the next question is, okay, you need actually for the cockpit, you need an S550 MC for certain materials to make this, to grant the security for the passengers, etc. But what about other items that can be produced out of alternative materials? So this is something that each of us has to take into consideration. That means replacement materials. The white paper is dealing with the overcapacities and steel service center activities. That means this was the overcapacities in steel making, which was always emphasized in the past years. And I think in Europe there was a number of about 30%. The same counts for the steel service center activities, that we are still facing overcapacities in steel service center activities, and I have not seen a single steel service center which was going into insolvency or something else, and it was not taken over by another company to continue the activities. So that means that the equipment is still there, and also the overcapacities are still there. The enhanced technologies I was describing is also more and more. We have also in EUROMETAL on a regular basis steel service center meetings where also the members, that means the individual steel service centers, are exchanging with what systems they are working today to fulfill the requirements of the customers, and in particularly also of the automotive industry. The automotive industry is becoming more and more sophisticated, but also demanding in terms of documentation that they need, that they want from the supplier in order to secure them. And this is not so easy to get. It always sounds easy, but it's extremely complicated, and that means that also all of these companies need to prepare for this, because it's not only the VDA, but it's also it's a Mercedes, it's a BMW, it's a VW, who are dramatically increasing demands, where even the operational units of the OEMs are saying this is exaggerated, but effectively you have to follow this. The steel market 2018, everybody was talking about this today, what is going to happen in 2018, and of course with all the influences and factors we have to take into consideration, extremely difficult. We have a growth rate which is half of what we have experienced 2017. So that means, and this is basically, it's still of course an increase, but this is going through almost, and particularly into the automotive sector. That means the demand from the automotive sector is the lowest, and we just see actually that particularly the investments in mechanical equipment is going to rise, but under the bottom line we have, let's say, the 1.9, 1.8% plus in 2018 versus actually double in 2017. You can also see the perspectives in the individual sectors. So if you see automotive with plus 1.7% in 2018, it is the lowest within the different industries. That means a lot is depending on the others. Construction is running fairly well, and also appliances, that means domestic and also metalwares, is running quite good, and also engineering, as still the order books also in this field are pretty high, despite some rumors that also this is going to decline in the course of the year. So the market supplies, that means the apparent consumption of the EU. If you take a look at these figures and you look at 2013 upwards, you have seen actually a constant growth in supplies of finished steel products. That means also the forecast for 2018 is giving another 3 million tons of an increase, and that of course is certainly raising the question of, is there still a steel cycle? Do we still have a steel cycle? We have seen in the last years only one direction. How long is this going to sustain? Okay, this was it, I think, sorry. Yes, I think I can finish. I hope I was not too fast. I want to finish with the words that EUROMETAL is, again, not only for European companies, and we have also very strong links with the Turkish Federation, and we are inviting also others, because particularly now we think that it is more important to speak with a louder voice from a stronger federation or from a stronger setup, also to go against certain political ideas that are born fairly quickly and can also die fairly quickly, but that are at least a danger. So to speak actually all together brings much more of a value than doing it alone. Well, thank you very much, and again, thank you very much for receiving me here.
Thank you, Alexander. So, before directing you the questions from the audience, let me ask you the first question. I know you are against the investigation that the European Commission has initiated last month. What actions are you taking to prevent a possible safeguard measure?
Are you asking me as EUROMETAL or asking me as Alexander Julius of Macrometal? Well, I have to, as EUROMETAL, I clearly have to say I cannot make a statement. We have, if you see the rules of EUROMETAL, we can only say yes, we are in favor of the WTO, and we are committing ourselves to the rules of the WTO, and we are identifying ourselves with it. Full stop. When you're asking me, Alexander of Macrometal, I can only say yes. We registered immediately as an interested party, and we had just actually during lunch we had a discussion about that, because this is going to a threat. This is a threat. This is actually an announcement of a trade war, and this is something which is completely without any need for the EU. Some simple figures, and again, this is also one of the reasons why everybody should stand up and say, listen, EU, this is unfair what you're doing. We have, this case was made up, you know, when you're making up a case, you're always taking an investigation period. That means an investigation period where, of course, in this case, also, the increase of imports was pretty drastic. But it always depends a little bit, again, on the period that you're taking. So if you're taking the time of 2008 and 2017 and putting it into direct comparison, the figure is deviating by about 3 million tons, I think. So it's pretty narrow. And then if you see that we have basically in the 3 years taking measures against hot rolled coil from Russia, from China, from Ukraine, from different other countries where we have taken measures against cold roll about galvanized rebars and whatsoever. So all these measures are affecting steel supplies of about 12 million tons into the EU. 12 million tons. So most of these measures are only showing the final consequences in terms of import declaration in 2018. In particularly, hot dip galvanized. Gal from China was 1.6 million tons last year. So this is almost, I think, out of these 1.6 million tons, only perhaps 300,000 tons for the automotive industry will remain. Otherwise, it's out. China was 50% of all imports together. So that means when you're taking the figure of 26 million tons imports into the EU in 2017, you have to take into consideration that the EU exported 23.6 million tons. Pretty balanced, I would say. So, and that, of course, with a perspective of decreasing imports still into the EU in 2018. And I don't see the danger. But of course, there's from certain parties the goal to close the doors. This is politically, and this is wrong. This is economically a disaster, and will affect, like in the case of the United States, more EU end users. That's why clearly, me personally, but again, if there's somebody from the press, not EUROMETAL, Alexander, Julius, against that, yes, and we registered.
Has it affected your business so far?
No.
After the announcement, no?
No, because to be quite frank, we are continuing as usual.
So you are still importing?
Oh, of course, and we will continue to import. What shall we do? Close the doors now? We will import, further import, but at the same time, we know it is linked to the Section 232, but it is dangerous, and that's why everybody has to go against that. Everybody has to stand up, go against that, right? And even if these are protest letters to the EU, at least I would like to motivate everybody to register with the European Commission. You can still do it until, I think, until the 19th of April. Register as an interested party on the homepage of the European Commission, as so that you will remain in the picture, and then we have to do anything possible to go against that.
And do you have an expectation regarding the result of the investigation now?
Again, I think we can influence the investigation. Everybody can influence the investigation. And as I initially said, if you take the bare figures as I just presented, and we also sent to the press, to the media, basically it shows that there's no threat, that there's no increased import, so there's no threat for the EU steel-making industry. So my expectation is that there can be something if there's no agreement between Europe and the United States in the case of Section 232, which is deadline, or which is actually scheduled, I think, for May.
Thank you, Alexander.
My pleasure.
Sorularınız varsa sorularınızı alabiliriz.
Hello, Mr. Julius, thank you for the presentation. I have a question about the steel service centers and the stockists, total 80 million tons of intermediation you talked about. How much of that tonnage was imported into Europe? How much of it was foreign material, non-European material? And do you see that intermediation industry growing further in the total 150 million ton apparent consumption, or reducing, because there is a tendency for more mill supply directly to end users? So I wonder your opinion about that.
With regards to answer your first question, with regards to what portion is being used from imported material, this is very difficult to say. I can only tell you that Our customers, that means the major steel service centers, they are using between 5 and 15% of imported material in their process. But it's differing, and there's no final figure on that. But that's why they are certainly still much dependent on the European suppliers. With regards to steel service centers, or let's say intermediation, the steel mills, basically there's the steel mills, when we are talking about direct mill supplies, there's always a question of if an end user can use coils. I mean, we are talking mainly about strip products. If an end user can use coils right away, or if you need steel service, that means slitting, cutting, blanking, whatever. In this respect, I think that this is going to remain. Steel service centers are going to remain. The question is just that there's certainly also a tendency with new products that are going to be developed by steel mills, by certain steel mills, that they do not make it available, or only limited to a limited extent available to independent steel services. So there are certain high-strength, low-alloy products, specific product properties that only one or two mills have. So this creates already an obstacle, of course, for the independent ones. I think the independent ones, the ones I know and are in place, are very well positioned. And there is no way for an OEM, that means for an end user in an automotive company, to go around a steel service center, because they have partially really special articles, tailor-made, small tonnages. And we are talking about then a few strips to be supplied just in time. So all of these services, that means not only a steel service center, but also a logistics supplier, a solution supplier. This is also creating the value, and this is also what is going to retain in the market, no doubt. The question is, of course, that the steel mills certainly also have an advantage. They are in the vertical integration. They have almost anything. I mean, they are the big chunks. They have even their own mines, but they're having their blast furnaces, their electric arc furnaces. They're having their hot rolling mill, cold rolling mill, finishing lines. They're having then the steel service center activities up to roll forming equipment for trapezoidal sheet production whatsoever. So they basically have a lot, and they definitely, and this is the only thing I can tell you, is they will not stop to do that.
So maybe more switching to the mills, perhaps.
I think this is the tendency. This is also, if you've seen on one of the charts that when I was indicating a figure about the mill integrated steel service centers, 2015, it was roughly 1/3. I have a figure at the moment that it's almost 50%.
Başka sorumuz yok sanırım. Ben şimdi YİSAD Yönetim Kurulu Başkan Yardımcısı Ahmet Soybaş'ı davet etmek istiyorum. Plaketini vermek üzere.